I'm Risa Goldstein, and I want to ask you, who is your Jethro? Who in your life can open your eyes to leadership challenges you're not even aware of? In Exodus 18, Moses' father-in-law Jethro offers sound advice that all leaders should take to heart. Moses had just led the Israelites out of Egypt. From morning to night, day after day, in the middle of the Sinai desert, Moses single-handedly judged the disputes of the 600,000 newly freed people he brought out from Egypt. And from morning to night, those 600,000 stood around waiting to have their cases heard by him. Moses wasn't aware he'd become a micromanaging workaholic, too busy to step back and notice a course correction was needed. The breakthrough for Moses came when someone from outside the situation saw things with fresh eyes, someone Moses knew and trusted, who provided insight and enabled Moses to see that his workload was not sustainable and he was headed for trouble. Jethro, Moses' non-Jewish father-in-law and the first leadership consultant, was that someone for Moses. The advice Jethro gave Moses wasn't easy to hear. Nobody likes to be told that the way they're doing something is flawed. Jethro reasoned, "The task is too heavy for you. You cannot do it alone. Let them share the burden with you." But what Jethro is really saying is, "Hey, Moses, you can't possibly judge every conflict here in the desert all by yourself. You need help with this, or you'll burn out before you do any good." The way Jethro phrased his counsel to delegate and power share as a more effective and efficient way of serving the people was practical and blunt, and it led Moses to reevaluate the way he worked. We all need a Jethro in our lives, a trusted friend or a mentor who'll tell it like it is, not the way we want it to be. So, I ask again, who is your personal Jethro? Who can bring an outside perspective to the things you're doing? I want to tell you about two people I know, Daniel and Maya. This is Daniel. He's a member of the Gen X generation and has worked at his organization for over 20 years. He joined the nonprofit as a temp in the accounting department after getting his BA in English and diligently worked his way up over the years to his current position of Executive Vice President of Development. Daniel has a top-down management style when making decisions. Like many senior-level leaders before him, Daniel got here by exceptional individual performance. He believes in working long hours, doing whatever it takes to get the job done, and that company loyalty should be rewarded. And he leads the same way. He's tough to please, and he doesn't trust anyone's judgment beyond his own. Sounds a lot like Moses pre-Jethro, doesn't he? So far, Daniel's approach hasn't been challenged by any of his direct reports. That is, until Maya joins his team. Enter Millennial Maya, with her undergraduate and 2 master's degrees. Despite being recently hired, Maya is already well connected throughout the organization and has gained a lot of visibility. She's bold and confident, she's opinionated, and she is not afraid to speak up about her ideas. Unlike Daniel, she believes that management styles should be more inclusive. She expects flexible work hours and has made it very clear that her performance should be rewarded regardless of the amount of time she spent working at their organization. Tensions arise between Daniel and Maya often due to a lack of mutual understanding and trust. Daniel's frustrated at the fact that the connections Maya's made in her unbelievably short time at their organization took him many years to achieve. Maya sees Daniel's years of experience as a liability, sending the message that his approach to development are out of date. And maybe they are. Clearly, there's a disconnect between how the two think in this multi-generational workplace. But can there be a meeting of the minds? 21st century North American Jewry needs a new model of leadership, and it starts right here. I propose that the 2 generations can, dare I say must, learn from one another. In Pirkei Avot, there's a notable saying, "Make for yourself a teacher and acquire yourself a friend." Daniel's forgotten that before she can be a leader, Maya's job is to grow herself. That as a leader himself, it's time for Daniel to pivot his focus. Time for him to teach and grow the leadership of others like Maya. The most successful organizations today and in the future will be those who can learn to create a happy alchemy between these two generations. Millennials are the generation born between 1980 and the year 2000, and there are 83 million of them. Millennials might be the most talked about generation of all. In fact, Time magazine refers to them as the me generation. Overambitious, narcissistic, and with an overwhelming sense of entitlement. They challenge the status quo and have a different sense of beliefs and expectations in the workplace than previous generations. They're also forward-thinking go-getters who tend to achieve what they set their sights on. They bring new ideas and are tech-savvy and driven. Gen Xers, on the other hand, bring patience and understanding that life is a marathon, not a sprint. They use timeless wisdom and apply it to modern-day problems. They welcome every opportunity as a challenge to learn and grow, and don't take things too personally. The question is, can we get institutions to tap into this midlife wisdom as they nurture their millennial prodigies? Listen, ultimately we all want the same things, right? We want to be fairly compensated for our efforts and have greater work-life balance and the opportunities to fulfill our potential. According to Nonprofit Pro, the most common reason for leaving a nonprofit are being underpaid, a lack of upward mobility, and excessive workloads. The annual average turnover rate today for nonprofit employees is 15%. In the fall of 2017, Leading Edge conducted a survey called "Are Jewish Organizations Great Places to Work?" and found that less than half of respondents think they'll continue working in the Jewish nonprofit sector for 5 years or more. The business community understands that the cost of losing employees can be substantial, as can hiring the wrong ones. It's time for the Jewish nonprofit sector to recognize this as well. Employee turnover is a burden on any organization, and it's expensive, costing an institution 150% of an annual salary to replace a mid-level professional position. That means if an organization loses a professional making $50,000 a year, it's going to cost $75,000 to replace her. So if we look at a nonprofit with 50 employees, take that 15% turnover rate and assume each of those professionals made $50,000, that institution is wasting more than $500,000 in turnover and lost productivity every single year. And according to that Leading Edge study, within the next 4 to 6 years, 75 to 90% of Jewish nonprofit organizations will be faced with the daunting challenge of replacing their retiring CEOs and executive directors. But the senior level management pipeline is running dry as organizations struggle to attract and retain talent. From rigid, bureaucratic workplace cultures to steep hierarchies providing little autonomy for mid-level staff to feel ownership over their work, to limited career advancement opportunities and the inability to offer a competitive salary, the talent wasteland is understandable. We already have work that provides so much meaning, so much soul fulfillment, and gives so much to others. Now, it's essential that our organizations create workplaces that are collaborative and inclusive, regardless of age. We need to define a new way of leading and develop one another to rise to the occasion. This is the only way to remain relevant and purposeful, the only way we will survive the 21st century. Collaboration or power sharing, as advised by Jethro, is the key to a successful present and future. It's our job to find the right professionals to be part of our organizations and to move those people forward. We must treat our professionals as colleagues and partners, not employees, regardless of age. They want to be key stakeholders in the shaping of our community vision. Leadership is a renewable energy source, ever stronger by sharing influence with others, just as the flame of one candle can be used to kindle many without weakening its own light. Effective leaders enable others. They give them authority and they help them feel a sense of communal belonging. Shared power is the essence of strong leadership. As Hal Lewis reveals in From Sanctuary to Boardroom, leadership comes from those who perceive a challenge or crisis, articulate a vision, and build a coalition of others who will embrace and follow that vision. 21st century leaders must accept that they are less the expert and more the convener of experts. In her book, Followership, Barbara Kellerman reports that the leader's capacity to motivate followers depends on the leader's ability to behave in a way that exemplifies the values and ideals that are shared by the groups they lead, regardless of age. If we apply the lessons of Talmudic sages to leadership, we understand that humility is one of the 6 essential behaviors of great leaders. 21st century Jewish leaders must have the humility to know that teachers can come from all ages, perspectives, cultures, and colors, just as Jethro came from a different religion and culture than Moses. As Larry Bossidy observes, it's not a question of thinking less of yourself, it's a question of thinking of yourself less. Humility is not a sign of weak leadership, but one of strength. It's not what a leader does, it's what a leader is. Leadership is accepting what Deborah Ancona praises as an incomplete leader. That incomplete does not mean incompetent. That only when leaders come to see themselves as incomplete, as having both strengths and weaknesses, will they be able to make up for their missing skills by relying on others. So let's ask ourselves, who might we learn from? Who can enlighten our thinking? Who is your personal Jethro? I urge my Gen X peers like Daniel to stop trying to live up to the image of infallibility and to open the intergenerational wisdom pipeline and find a millennial mentor, not a mentee, someone who challenges you. Because if we don't, we'll miss fundamental shifts in thinking that are happening right now, every single day. We need to tap the brilliance of this emerging generation of leaders, all 83 million of them. And when we do, we will have found that new model of leadership the 21st century North American Jewish community needs for today and the future. Thank you.